ANC's almost three-month election campaign period will culminate at the FNB Stadium outside Soweto in Johannesburg today. The EFF is today holding its final election rally at the Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane in Limpopo. The party launched its election manifesto in February this year in Durban under the theme Our Land and Jobs Now, Stop Load Shedding. The party, which is the third largest party in the country, currently has 44 seats in the 400-seat National Assembly after obtaining just over 10% of the vote. And International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor has described the ruling of the International Court of Justice against Israel as a victory for Palestinians. It's Saturday and time for Week in Review. Good afternoon and thank you so much for joining us here. We are live with you from our studio in Johannesburg and from the multiple final political rallies before Wednesday's general election. I'm Gustav Freiling and we invite you to be part of the show. You can give us a call on our studio number, that's 011 714 0680. 0681 or 0682. And that's during the course of the next 2 hours to give your comments on our stories. Now, the ANC's almost three-month election campaign period is culminating at the FNB Stadium at Nasrec in Johannesburg this afternoon. And for more, we now cross live to our SABC News reporter Samkele Maseko at the FNB Stadium before we later head to Polokwane, where our reporter Pimani Baloyi is standing by at the EFF rally. But Samkele, let's start with you. Good afternoon. What is things looking like at the FNB Stadium right now? Is it filling up?
At this point in time, the FNB Stadium is relatively filling up. I'm just going to ask my colleague Tulo Munari just to show you what is currently transpiring here at the stadium. As you can see, ANC members and supporters are trickling in the stadium of the FNB, a 90,000 capacity stadium. There was an issue of buses through the spokesperson who told us, or rather the head of elections, Mr. Mtumiseni Ntuli, who said that there were delays in Tshwane and in the West Rand regions where buses arrived at around 7 o'clock going towards those particular areas. They said that they anticipate that the president of the ANC would speak at about 1 o'clock midday today, but I doubt that he will speak around that time. Looking at the numbers that are currently in the stadium, I can say it is about 75% full at this stage in time, and their members and supporters are still trickling into the stadium.
These rallies today over this weekend about the political issues that we're going to hear from later from the president, or about the optics, about showing support?
Essentially, this is about the ANC showing its strength to its detractors, that they are not on their knees electorally and they are going out to these elections to fight for an outright majority provincially in Gauteng, provincially in KwaZulu-Natal, nationally within the country, and with an aim to bring the Democratic Alliance under 50% in the Western Cape. So they are going all out in order to try and show that they still have some support relatively within the province of Gauteng, saying that they will ultimately still be the biggest parties in KwaZulu-Natal. In Gauteng, they won't speak about percentages at this time because they are fighting for an outright majority. You also do know that the former president of the ANC, Thabo Mbeki, was meant to come to this particular Siyanqoba rally. He has sent out a video to ANC members and supporters that he is unable to attend the rally due to ill health and that he was hospitalized last week. But the ANC is putting out all the stops in a show of force here at the FNB Stadium, where their president will essentially speak later on this afternoon.
Do we know anything at this stage about the program, about the events that's going to happen there today?
At this point in time, there are musical festivities that are taking place. My colleague Tula will show you that there are musical items being rendered by musical groups such as that who are on stage at this point in time, which is Boom Shaka. We also do know that a number of other artists will be playing and entertaining these ANC members who are sitting in this scorching heat.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us there live from the FNB Stadium this afternoon in Johannesburg. That's our SABC News reporter, Samkele Maseko. And we'll go back to the FNB Stadium and we'll monitor the events happening there today. Now, in the meantime, the Freedom Front Plus leader, Pieter Groenewald, says economic recovery will be the priority in the government led by his party. Groenewald was speaking in Kimberley in the Northern Cape last night at the party's last meeting ahead of the elections next Wednesday. They're hoping for a strong showing to bring the ANC below 50% and create a multi-party coalition government.
The FF Plus were the surprise performers in the 2019 elections, increasing its votes by 250%. It's hoping for a similar showing this year. The FF Plus says it will focus on the economy, lower personal and company taxes, privatizing Eskom, reverse the National Health Insurance Act, as well as take nationalization of property off the table.
The reason why we focus on the economy is that we say the biggest threat to South Africa is unemployment. And the only way you can create jobs is if you ensure that the economy grows. And therefore we have a specific plan to say what we should do to ensure economic growth.
The party currently has one seat in the Northern Cape legislature, which it hopes to at least double next week. It says it will focus on minority rights, especially those of the Khoi and San communities, but also use the Northern Cape's renewable energy to power itself.
Regarding the green electricity for which the Northern Cape is well known, we believe that the Northern Cape shouldn't just supply power for the rest of the country. We should really take the initiative and use our own power, our own sun electricity to industrialize our own province.
The party also wants a specialized prosecutor-driven unit to investigate organized crime, including the so-called construction and water mafias and the escalating kidnappings in the country. Ulrich Hendricks, SABC News, Kimberley, Northern Cape.
The Independent Communications Authority of South Africa says the Complaints and Compliance Committee has found that the SABC's refusal to air a Democratic Alliance political advert had no legal basis under the Electronic Communications Act or the regulations. The DA filed the complaint against the public broadcaster, arguing that the SABC had unlawfully rejected its advert. The ad shows a digital composition of the country's national flag burning and then unfurling fully restored with background narration campaigning for the DA. Now, the CCC recommends a 500,000 rand fine for breaching regulations due to prejudice caused to the DA. It also calls for the SABC to broadcast the DA advert. The SABC says it is studying the CASA decision and will decide on a response once it has consulted on its implications. The DA says they welcome the ruling. Now, a former DA leader in the Eastern Cape, Banga, has joined the ANC ahead of the national elections. Banga says he is confident that his political knowledge and skills gained over the many years in politics will add value to the ANC. He says he is committed to renewing the ANC.
Banga served as mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay from December 2020 to November 2021 under the DA. He was expelled from the DA party last year following social media comments which were seen to tarnish the image of the party. Banga was suspended after calling Federal Council Chair Helen Zille a racist. He then resigned as DA legislature leader in the Eastern Cape last year.
I think the ANC have made a very big impression to me, and I've been thinking about this for quite some time. In particular, the ANC's decision on the issue of Palestine have touched me because it reminded of what the ANC is, an organization that fights for humanity, not only in South Africa but in the world. The injustice of the killing, more than 35,000, 75,000 people injured in Palestine.
Welcome back to Week in Review. Now, the International Court of Justice has ordered Israel to immediately halt its military offensive in Rafah in Gaza. South Africa had taken the state of Israel to the World Court, saying the situation is dire in southern Gaza. The ICJ had also been asked to modify its previous provisional measures. Pretoria has welcomed the World Court order. The ICJ has also called for humanitarian aid to be allowed to flow through the Rafah crossing.
By 13 votes to 2, immediately halt its military offensive and any other action in the Rafah governorate which may inflict on the Palestinian group in Gaza conditions of life that would bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part.
Sharp and clear, the International Court of Justice has delivered its order on the request for the modification and the indication of provisional measures submitted by South Africa on May 10th in the South Africa versus Israel case. The World Court has also called for the aid to be allowed via the Rafah crossing.
Maintain open the Rafah crossing for unhindered provision at scale of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance.
The ICJ stated in no uncertain terms that the fact-finding missions who are mandated to conduct investigations in Gaza must also be given access.
Take effective measures to ensure the unimpeded access to the Gaza Strip of any commission of inquiry, fact-finding mission, or other investigative body mandated by competent organs of the United Nations to investigate allegations of genocide.
South Africa has welcomed the order.
But I believe a much stronger, in terms of wording, set of provisional measures, very clear call for a cessation, very important, and then the opening of the Rafah border and ensuring that humanitarian aid is made available, and then seizing this planned and current onslaught on Rafah, which is growing by the week.
But the key question is, will Israel comply with the provisional measures?
Well, Israel has had impunity for so long that they don't care what the global community says. So I think the responsibility goes to us as member states of the United Nations, and most particularly to the Security Council, because it's the one that has responsibility for global peace and security. So they must now determine measures to protect the people of Palestine.
The minister also commented on the International Criminal Court's possible warrants of arrest for key figures like Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his defense minister, and some Hamas officials.
Well, I think the ICC, in terms of its statute, clearly identified the areas of harm in indicating what it is seeking the warrants for. I thought that certain matters with respect to the reality of the history of the situation were not reflected in the statement of the prosecutor. For example, the issue of occupation, the responsibility of an occupier, the right of a people who are oppressed to defend and fight for freedom, to resist being occupied, being oppressed, being denied all rights. Those things were not mentioned.
The World Court further says Israel must submit a report to the court within a month on all measures taken to give effect to this order. Kylie Kumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Right, Mkhonto Sizwe party leader Jacob Zuma is today expected to address supporters at a rally in Hammersdale, that's west of Durban in KwaZulu-Natal. And for more, we cross live now to our SABC News reporter Vusi Kumalu, who is there. Vusi, please take us through what is happening there today in Hammersdale, where you are.
Yes, of course. We are still here at Hammersdale. This is west of Durban. Well, the official program has just started with a prayer item currently being rendered by one of the pastors here. But with me are quite a number of people who are here together here at this stadium here just west of Durban. Quite a number of people have turned up, and also we're also seeing quite a number of buses who are coming in droves here to be part of this gathering, which is the last stretch just before the 29th May general election that will be taking place on Wednesday. Let us talk to the rank and file of the party who are here just to hear from the voice of the president of the party or the leader of the party, Mr. Jacob Zuma. Let us hear perhaps isizwe kafushane sisi igama nesibongo asitshele kabanzi ukuthi mhlambe wena njengoba kuvota umhla 29 kuMay ivoti lakho limi kanjani. Sakubona ugqoka impahla already ze-MK, kodwa ivoti lakho ngabe lizowenza amahluko muni emphakathini osuka kuwona?
Igama lami nguNokulunga Wangcobo. Mina ivoti lami lizowenza omkhulu umehluko njengoba vele MK izothatha nje ngolesithathu mhla ka-29. Mina elami ivoti lizoshintsha ukuthi umuntu omusha ena-35 akabe sakwazi ukusebenza. Umuntu kufanele abe ne-experience le engekho vele asebenze ihlele emakhaya, kodwa mangaba uya kofuna imisebenzi kuthiwa kufunakala experience ya 10 years kodwa futhi imisebenzi ayikho. Mina elami ivoti nje ngifuna lishintshe lapho kakhulu.
Okay, well, she's talking about these 35-year-olds who are perhaps in government currently. They are being encouraged. They are also encouraging for government employees from 18 to 35. But she's saying that she's over 35 years. She will lack a government of the MK to change that so that they can also apply for government jobs from 35 years upwards. Let's see also another view from the MK. Sisiyabonga kakhulu. Ngabe uzovotelani? Sakubona ugqoka iskip already. Kumi kanjani ngasemkhaya? Iziphi inselele enibhekene nazo eningathanda ukuthi ngevotileni lenze umahluko omkhulu?
Igama lami nguMbali Wangidi. Ukuvotela i-MK kuzowenza ushintsho olukhulu ngoba sokwazi ukuthi sithuthuke, kube nomgwaqo, kwazi ukuthi kuvikeleka nalezi zifo ezifika ne-ANC.
Okay, ake sizowena bhuti kafushane igama nesibongo awusitshela ukuthi njoba nilana kahle kahle yini enifuna ukuyizwa kumsholozi njoba nithi vele uzoza lezo address namuhla. Igama nesibongo qala.
Igama lami nguSihle wakambeje. Mina into engilindele ukuba umsholozi ukuthi asigqugquzele la ukuthi sivote kahle. Ngoba vele uba umsholozi uzothatha lolu phetho uzoletha ushintsho olukhulu. Sithembele kuyena ubaba wethu umsholozi. Yebo.
Yes, as I'm going to ask now our camera person Usibusiso Tembe just to pan slowly on his left so that you can see a number of people who have already gathered here at Hammersdale. This is in Mpumalanga or west of Durban. As we are seeing the rank and file of the party to be part of this gathering here at Hammersdale, so that Jacob Zuma, the party leader, will be addressing them. As you can see in your visuals, Tembe is showing you just the portrait of Jacob Zuma. We are also expecting them to hand over to present these portraits to Jacob Zuma, who will be addressing the party supporters who have gathered here. But we also had a wind that Zuma may not also be part of this gathering, but let's wait and see to see whether that will be taking place or not. So these are the people who have come here to be part of this gathering here at Hammersdale, the young and old who have come out in numbers. So the parties are also ensuring that this is the last push. So they are trying their level best to ensure that the WU supporters coming from all the walks of life, especially here in KwaZulu-Natal, where we are seeing the MK, which is a new kid on the block, but being led by a veteran of Jacob Zuma, the former president of the country, trying to ensure that they also win these elections. As the rank and file, the supporters of the party are confident that come the 29th of May, they'll be taking over the country, they'll be ruling this country. That's according to the views of the people that we have just spoken to here at Hammersdale, as they're singing the party slogans and also dressed in the party regalia, ensuring that they also making their presence felt at Mpumalanga Stadium.
Vusi, thank you so much. SABC News reporter Vusi Kumalu live for us there from Hammersdale outside Durban. Right, now President Cyril Ramaphosa says corruption and gender-based violence are the two scourges plaguing the country. He says democracy cannot be fully achieved if women and girls are not free to walk the streets. The President was signing into law the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Bill and the National Prosecuting Authority Amendment Bill at the Union Buildings in Pretoria.
A fresh new law designed to litigate comprehensively against femicide and gender-based violence. The President says the fruits of democracy cannot be enjoyed if women live in abject fear.
Corruption and gender-based violence are two scourges that plague our country and corrode our social fabric. As we mark 30 years of democracy, we know that our aspiration to be a fully equal society cannot be achieved as long as criminals and corrupt people steal the resources meant for the benefit of the poor.
His minister in the presidency also weighed in.
As we reflect on their lives, we must channel our grief into action. It is our responsibility to challenge harmful norms, dismantle oppressive systems, and create a world where such tragedies no longer occur.
But a lot more work is needed to ensure this bill becomes action.
But the reality is that, notwithstanding high conviction rates, notwithstanding the fact that many more cases are coming to court, that sentences are higher, there doesn't seem to be any abatement in terms of a reduction of sexual and gender-based violence. So we really have to look at what we can do to prevent this. How do we ensure that the men of our country stop abusing and killing our women?
The police have recruited thousands of personnel to fight the scourge of GBV. Infrastructure is also being allocated to assist in fighting GBV.
We've got 1,153 police stations in the country, and definitely, if I'm not mistaken, there is one police station in Northern Cape where we don't have a friendly house where there would be abused people would be part of going to it. All stations we are having our friendly room.
This legislation is a critical step forward in ensuring the safety and security of women from all walks of life. Calvin Tlutla, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Welcome back. You're watching Week in Review on the SABC News channel. Now today is Africa Day. It is celebrated in various countries on the African continent as well as around the world. Nelson Mandela University in Gqeberha celebrated Africa Day in style by offering the public samples of some of the best dishes the continent has to offer. The mouth-watering event was organized by the Mandela International Office at the university.
The Nelson Mandela University community came together to rejoice in the rich cultural heritage of Africa, showcasing its varied languages, music and cuisine. The Africa Day celebration commenced with a culinary journey featuring delectable dishes from across the continent, including Nigeria's savory egusi soup, Ghana's flavorful jollof rice, and South Africa's own mukhudu. The aim is to embrace diversity.
The way people come from, the different countries, their cultures, and embrace each and every belief and ethics that they have, So we also want to make sure that the students that come in, from the different countries, whether they come in for short stay or for the full degree, that they, even though they are away from home, they know that they are hosted by a country, that acknowledges where they come from.
Various food stalls served a diverse selection of African dishes.
Egg rice, we came with wache, then we came with jollof rice. Yeah, but we got different types of foods over here. We got beans and plantain. We got fufu and lai soup, banku and okra. We got different types of foods in Ghana. Yeah.
Students from different countries couldn't contain their excitement about the event.
Africa Day means celebrating your culture and your meaning of where you come from, and as well as introducing your culture to everyone that don't know your culture as well, but also being proud of who you are as well.
This day, Africa Day, is really important to us as Africans because it's taking us back to who we are, being connected to our history, our tradition, and our diversity. To note that because LMU is an international institution, so you have Zulu, Xhosa, Shona people speak, and so being brought together in this day, we are here and embrace one another.
Africa Day is celebrated annually to commemorate the foundation of Organization of Africa Unity in 1963. Domozuko Palindolo, SABC News, Gqeberha.
Welcome back to Week in Review. The veteran DA MP James Selfe has been described as a pioneer in South Africa's opposition politics. The 68-year-old died on Tuesday. Former colleagues have reflected on Selfe's commitment to nation building.
Former DA Chief Whip James Selfe was described as someone who treated everyone fairly. Some of his former colleagues in Parliament across party lines spoke of how respectful he always was.
Honourable Selfe was one of the most respected and dignified member of the National Assembly. He was easily approachable, kind-hearted, and respected all of us, irrespective of our political affiliations. Honourable Selfe served as the Shadow Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, and whenever the DA threatens court in Parliament, we knew that Honourable Selfe would be the brains behind it.
The FF Plus hailed Selfe as a hard-working MP with regard for others.
I came to know James as a member of Parliament who always treated everyone with respect, despite differences you could have had. James was a hard-working and dedicated member of Parliament. He always respected the decorum of a Parliament. He was loyal to his party, and that is an example of what a member of Parliament should be in South Africa.
The IFP and the ACDP highlighted his regard for the law and his knowledge of the justice and correctional system.
I had the profound pleasure of working with James Selfe from 1993 during the CODESA negotiations. And then we were privileged to serve in the Senate of the Republic of South Africa from 1994 onwards. James was one who respected and upheld the rule of law, and he believed that that was paramount if we needed to ensure that our democracy meant anything. He was an astute negotiator, as I experienced when we were talking about coalitions in local government, committed to South Africa, committed to his party, and committed to nation building.
James served in both the National Council of Provinces and the National Assembly since 1994 and played a key role in the drafting of the new constitution. Parliament has indeed lost one of the most hard-working and dedicated parliamentarians that I've had the honour of working with. As a member of the Justice and Correctional Services Portfolio Committee since 1999, I served with James on this committee for many years. His institutional knowledge and deep insight into the inner workings of the Department of Correctional Services ensured that he was unrivaled and very effective in holding both the ministry and department accountable. I will miss his friendship, wisdom, and humour dearly.
It is a great loss, not only for his family, but to the entire country. James Selfe was a hard worker, committed to his work in Parliament. I have worked with James Selfe for many years in the Portfolio Committee of Correctional Services, where I chaired the Portfolio Committee. I will never forget his contribution to the betterment of conditions at correctional services, not only for the inmates, but also for the correctional service officials. We have lost a humble, honest human being.
Selfe was a keen mentor who generously shared his knowledge and experience with younger MPs.
I had the kind privilege of working with James, and in all that time he showed incredible commitment to not only the Constitution of South Africa but service to our nation. He became a close friend and an ally, someone I could rely on for sound advice, but also someone who was in the trenches fighting the lawfare. When we had cases against the government or anything, James Selfe was at the forefront of that and would at times give me the privilege to go and take the victories, whilst he was always happy to go and fight the losses. That speaks to the tribute of a person who was willing to serve without needing recognition. It is with absolute sadness when I heard of his passing, noting that it's been after a long illness. But I with all of that pain, know that his life's stature would be a life that has contributed immensely to this country. Generations will be grateful for the service that James has given to our nation. And ultimately, I really believe a great tree has fallen, but generations will sit under its shade.
Parties and former colleagues passed their condolences to Selfe's widow Sheila and their 3 daughters, as well as the DA. Abra Barbia, SABC News, Parliament.
Right, the EFF is today holding its final election rally at the Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane in Limpopo. The party launched its election manifesto in February this year in Durban under the theme Our Land and Jobs Now, Stop Load Shedding. Let's cross live now to our reporter Pimani Baloy. No, it's our reporter Natasha Piri who is there for us in Polokwane this afternoon. Natasha, good afternoon.
Welcome back to the Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane, and you know we actually just got cut off. Just apologies to our SABC viewers. Technology sometimes is really a difficulty, but we are speaking to Mafia Fani, who's the head of youth mobilization. And Mafia, you were telling us that, you know, in these elections, we saw more young people actually coming out to register to vote. But I just also want to take you through these figures. I mean, we've got a voter population of 39 million, right, South Africans. We've got over 27 million people on the voters' roll. But you look at the age cohort of those who are 20 to 29. The voting age population there is 9 million, but those who are on the certified voters' roll are 4 million people. What does that tell you?
No, well, that tells us that not much has been done to make sure that young people are made to be interested in voting. And if there's anyone to blame for that, it is the government that is ruling now, that has been promising people, and unfortunately they've not delivered on anything on what they've been promising. And that has made young people to be discouraged a lot, and they see as if the process of voting does not assist them in any way. But I can tell you now, out of the figures that you are saying here, majority of those young people, and I can confidently say 70 to 80% of them, they are going to rally their weight and rally their support behind the EFF. Because if you can check the EFF manifesto, in the political, the social and the economic upliftment of young people has been perfectly resonated with the EFF manifesto. In each and every aspect of the manifesto, we are clear as the EFF in terms of what is it that we are going to do for young people in South Africa. And those are practical solutions. They are not just theoretical. They are accompanied by practicalization of how those things will be realized. So if there's any moment where young people are going to vote in their numbers, it's in these upcoming elections. And also, my sister, do not believe that the age that is above 35 years going up does not believe in the EFF. The message of the EFF has resonated with the people of South Africa. If you can go to Nkomazi, where I'm coming from, every day when we call meetings of the EFF, we have old people that are always coming to attend those particular meetings. So that shows you that these old people now, they are willing to engage. Unlike before, 10 years ago, when they were not even willing to give us an ear. Things have improved now. They can see that the EFF is a force to reckon with, and they can see that the EFF is an alternative to the ANC.
Mafia, and you know this argument very well. Critics have said that the EFF is very good at filling up, the stadium with young people, very good at entertainment, but they somewhat don't draw the numbers that they hope to draw at the polls.
You know, we cannot blame the EFF for filling up stadiums. When people come and want to listen to the message of the Commander-in-Chief, that's their own discretion. But what you must understand, something that makes these elections different is that the EFF has done thorough groundwork, where the EFF was able to go into communities. Each and every community or each and every ward has what we call VDETFs that are existing in each and every voting station. 20 of them, 20 battalions are stationed in that particular voting station to make sure that we speak to our people and make sure that the message of the EFF resonates. A lot of the message of the, many things that the EFF has been saying have been distorted. And now we have taken it upon ourselves to go to the ground, to the most ordinary people, and be able to explain to them what do we mean when we say land must be expropriated? What do we mean when we say we must nationalize all strategic assets of the economy? What do we mean when we say the state must build capacity and tenders must be abolished? What do we mean when we say people must have free access to education, free access to housing, free access to sanitation? All those things have been explained. Most of the things that have made maybe the EFF to suffer from the distortion that has been going around is people going to voters and telling them that the EFF want to bring back foreigners here and replace South Africans with them. It is not true. The EFF is speaking about an integrated approach in fighting for economic freedom in our lifetime. You don't fight for economic freedom in South Africa and leave it in the neighboring country, because those people are going to flock where they are greener pastures. We are like animals. That's how we operate. So now, the issue of saying we're filling up stadium, it is neither here nor there. People are going to vote for the EFF, and this time around, people are going to be surprised because the EFF is going to do well in this upcoming election.
Afia, how do you make sure that your message actually filters down to the youth of Polokwane? I mean, the unemployment rate is over 47%. Young people in this province want jobs. Shortly and briefly, how do you ensure that message filters down to young people in this province of jobs?
The EFF is very much clear on its manifesto. The EFF is saying we must bring in a legislation that is going to compel government departments as well as public institutions to hire as part of their workforce at least 40% of young people. The EFF is saying let us use state procurement as means to create job opportunities so that we can be able that 80% of the goods and services that the goods and services that are supplied to the government department, they are produced locally. The only thing that we have a problem with here is that even the food economy of South Africa...
Unfortunately, I'll have to catch you. We've run out of time, but we will catch up with you later. Of course, that was Mafia Fani, just unpacking issues, especially around youth development. A lot of young people here in Limpopo have been crying about the issues of job. You would know that unemployment rate here in this province is over 47%, and we know that the national figures have shot up to 32.9% nationally. But of course, as SABC News, we continue to bring you live updates of the EFF rally, and I'll just step out quickly and show you what the stadium is actually looking like at this time. It's now 17 minutes to 1 o'clock, and this is the stadium, the Tupa rally of the EFF here at the Peter Mokaba Stadium. With that said, it's back to you in the studio.
Thank you so much, SABC News reporter Natasha Piri, joining us live there from Polokwane this afternoon. Right, now the Constitutional Court has ruled that the former President Jacob Zuma is not eligible to stand for elections. The court has just delivered judgment in the Electoral Commission's appeal of the Electoral Court order that allowed Zuma to remain on the Mkhonto we Sizwe Party's candidates list. The Commission approached the Apex Court to seek clarity on the interpretation of a section of the Constitution that relates to grounds on which people are eligible or ineligible to stand for elections. For more, we are now joined by political analyst Dr. Levi Ndo, joining us live here this afternoon. Thank you so much for being with us on Week in Review.
Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to the viewers at home. Thank you for having me.
So a judgment came out saying the Electoral Court was wrong. What then becomes of the, well, let's say the dignity of the Electoral Court? Because some might argue that the Electoral Court has had to make a series of unprecedented decisions in a limited amount of time, which might have contributed to this decision. What do you make of it?
It is coming at a very unfortunate time, at a time when stakes are very high, at a time when we are approaching very or highly contested elections. And of course, it draws a number of perceptions towards the Electoral Court. Some would say that they might not have done thorough work, or some might have thought that they actually took decisions because it's former President Jacob Zuma. But at the same time, you don't have to blame the IEC for taking the matter to the Constitutional Court, because number one, they could have been convinced that they are right, or they were right, by not having to include former President Jacob Zuma on the list. But number two, they had to ensure that whatever decision that they've taken has to get the highest legal test. And it has actually happened. And I think it also put the whole matter to rest, and also to check as to whether former President Zuma, his leadership in the MK party and his supporters would indeed adhere to the legal prescripts of the country.
What does this ruling mean politically for the MK party?
Well, it means a number of things. One, it will mean that it's a test for the MK party if indeed they respect and they will adhere by the rule of law. And at the same time, it will also test whether former President Jacob Zuma is comfortable to have someone leading the MK party, which will also tell whether he's actually selfish or not selfish. But another aspect is that we need to see how the MK party has to navigate to have a replacement for former President Jacob Zuma. And indeed, most people are actually awaiting the next step that the MK party has to take, because as people are moving towards elections, they would love to know who then is their first person who has to be sent to parliament by the MK party.
Okay, as you can see on the screen there next to you, we have these two rallies. It's the end of the political rallies before the election on Wednesday. We have the ANC rally here in Johannesburg at the FNB Stadium, and then we have the EFF rally at the Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane in Limpopo. What do you make of these two rallies today?
Well, I think is the step in the right direction. Political parties, as expected, have to go all out, send the last message to their voters, assure them that they are still there, assure them that what they have written in the manifesto, they still stand by it, and also at the same time, remind the people that elections are coming and they need to go and vote for them. And at the same time, these are the last messages from political parties, because beyond this, they need to go out, take a good rest, and leave it to the voters themselves to decide on what next to do after the last rallies have been held.
How much will today's rallies be about those political issues, the issues in the manifestos, or will it be more about a show of support, the optics of it?
It is both. Firstly, it's about showing up the degree of support that they have. It's also a play, a political psychology play to show that indeed they've got a lot of support. But lastly, it is about putting an emphasis on what they've put in their manifestos, assuring voters that put us in government, we're actually going to make sure that we implement what we've put in the manifesto. And this is the moment in which all political parties expect their supporters, their voters, to rally behind them to ensure that in the last few hours towards the vote, these people are not convinced by other political parties.
So if you look at the support today there in the stadiums, at the FNB trickling in, quite a lot of people at the Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane in Limpopo, will that translate into votes, or is this just a show of force?
This is just a show of force. And I think it's important to emphasize that when you invite people to come to the stadium, you don't only invite members of your party. Stadiums are open for everyone, members and non-members of political parties. Some people will even go and attend rallies whilst they're not registered as voters. Some people will go and attend rallies knowing that they're not going to vote for such parties. But more importantly, a vote is a secret and everything will be confirmed after the elections.
So this is about the elections head office at the party headquarters and their ability to fill those stadiums during this period. What is the motivation then for the people to go there?
There is a lot of motivation. Firstly, political parties will arrange transport logistics to ensure that members attend. But there are members who will voluntarily have to utilize their own resources to go to the stadium out of love of the political parties, because they want to listen to the messages, but also because there is a lot of entertainment in these events after the political leaders have actually spoken. But what becomes very important is that this revitalizes the mood for elections, and those who are not at the stadium are able to watch these kind of programs, and they get motivated to go and vote. So they play a very significant role in ensuring that ordinary citizens, active members of political parties, directly get involved in the election exercise.
In this election that is in 4 days from now. Thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon, political analyst Dr. Levi Ndo. And we're now going to take you back to the stadium, the FNB Stadium here in Johannesburg. The ANC's almost 3-month election campaign period is now culminating there at the FNB Stadium. It's at Nasrec in the south of Johannesburg. And we are now joined by our SABC News reporter Nhlanhla Khatlane, who is there. Please give us an update on what is happening there right now.
Yes, well, a very good day indeed, Gustav, coming to you right here from FNB Stadium, where the ANC is set to hold its final rally as the election day fast approaches. What I can tell you now, Gustav, is that earlier, about 5 minutes ago, we saw the ANC president there greeting people. He was standing just up there greeting everybody. But currently, people are still making their way into this stadium. We know that we spoke to people earlier, pledging their support to the ANC, sharing the very same sentiment, saying that the party that they trusted is the ANC. They were very excited when they saw the ANC president. Now it's going to be interesting in terms of what is it that the ANC president, Ramaphosa, is going to say with regards to how the party will govern going forward. We know that these are much contested elections with a lot of political parties that have shown interest, to dethrone the ANC in these upcoming elections. 4 days to go to D-Day. Elections are starting on Monday with special votes, and also on Wednesday with the votes. And post that, 3 days from that, we'll know the fate of South Africa with regards to who's going to be, which parties rather is going to be taking the country forward. We know that the ANC has governed since the dawn of democracy. But what we can tell you is that this 90,000 capacity stadium, it seems like it's going to be filled. Actually, there's a lot of people still currently, while I'm talking to you, people are just coming in. Earlier, I managed to get a chance to just go back to get a sense of, how if people were coming in. But what we can tell you and assure you is that people are still coming in, Gustav. With that being said, it's back to you in studio.
Thank you so much for joining us there live from the FNB Stadium in Johannesburg. Nhlanhla Khatlane, SABC News reporter. This is Week in Review on the SABC News channel, and we will be back right after this.
Mntwana kaSisimarini, kana ula eTexini kwenzakaleni?
Mama, yazi ukube bengine-insurance yaka-SASRA izinto bezoba ngcono kangakanani. Abantu abatelekayo sebengishisela imoto yami la endleleni.
SASRA yini manje leyo mntanami?
Mama, iSASRA inkampani ye-insurance le esiza abantu abanezimoto, izakhiwo kanye namabhizinisi. Wona lawa linyazwe yilabantu laba ababamba iteleka ngaphandle.
Ncese ngane yami, ncese.
Many in our community have lost their jobs, leaving us all struggling with the consequences of their actions.
When we protest, let us protect our infrastructure. It's about safeguarding our community's livelihoods.
The Full View, where accuracy meets fearlessness in every report. We're committed to going beyond the headlines, ensuring you get the complete picture. from breaking news to uncovering the truth while holding those in power to account.
Navigate the terrain of local and international sports,
while keeping you abreast with real-time weather updates.
So, get a comprehensive look of the world around you. Trust us to give you the full view.
Welcome back to Week in Review. Now, the disruptive taxi strike that occurred in the early hours of Friday in Durban has been suspended, and the affected roads have since been reopened, at least for now. Now, that's after the leadership of the Durban Long Distance Taxi Association had an impromptu meeting with KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. Taxi operators took to the streets to voice their concerns regarding the impounding of their taxis and the arrests of their drivers. They are accusing the Public Transport Enforcement Unit, Operation Chanela, of targeting them. NC's almost three-month election campaign period is culminating at the FNB Stadium outside Soweto in Johannesburg today. The EFF is today holding its final election rally at the Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane in Limpopo, and the party launched its election manifesto in February this year in Durban under the theme Our Land and Jobs Now, Stop Load Shedding. The party, which is the third largest party in the country, currently has 44 seats in the 400-seat National Assembly after obtaining just over 10% of the votes. And International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor has described the ruling of the International Court of Justice against Israel as a victory for Palestinians. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here on your Saturday afternoon for Week in Review, already in progress, and it's live from our studio in Johannesburg with live coverage of the final political rallies happening today ahead of Wednesday's general election. I'm Gustav Freiling, and we invite you to be part of the show. You can give us a call on our studio number. It's 011 714 0680, 0681 or 0682. And that's during the course of the next hour to give your comments on our stories. Right, activist Zaki Ahmad says it's tough contesting the 2024 general elections as an independent candidate. He says besides unjust laws regulating the participation of independent candidates, financial resources is also a hurdle.
Several political parties represented in the National Assembly are wrapping up their election campaigns this weekend. Also finding themselves in the midst of the election excitement are newcomers to this terrain, the independents. 11 independent candidates are contesting the elections, and they will require thousands of votes to secure a seat in Parliament. One of them is pinning his hopes on his track record as an activist.
I am very lucky to be able to stand as an independent because I've worked in movements for 48 years. And so people know me. Another independent would find it extremely difficult to stand because of the law being unjust and discriminatory against people who stand as independents.
Ahmad also says financing a political campaign is expensive. He says he spent about 12 million rand to get the required signatures to be on the ballot paper, while on election day he will fork out 700,000 rand for his volunteers. Ahmad says he took out a personal loan of over 2 million rand, while he also received donations from those who fund the big political parties.
The other thing that is critical, Fynbos Equitative funds, the DA has funded me. Temper Trust, who funds a range of political parties, has funded me. Then there's been a great woman called Inge van der Reen, and I shouldn't mention her name, she doesn't like mentioning her name. But she was a Treatment Action Campaign volunteer and she has family money.
The National Assembly has 400 seats. 200 will be contested by political parties and the other 200 by both political parties and independent candidates. A political analyst says the track record of an independent candidate will boost their chances of securing a seat in Parliament.
I think there are instances where they can stand a chance, and that would depend on how well known the independent candidate is, if they have a track record and a history. Because actually the credibility really matters a lot. And so if they're getting their message out there but they're not seen as credible, it will be really tough. So yes, they face challenges in terms of resources and costs and all of those things, but those are not insurmountable.
Independents will know how they fared in their debutant elections next week Sunday, when the IEC is expected to announce the election results. They are hoping to be recorded in history as the first independents who made it to the 7th Parliament. The Constitution requires that after an election, the first sitting of the National Assembly must take place at a time and date determined by the Chief Justice, but not later than 14 days after the election result has been declared. Mulama Maitya, SABC News, Parliament.
Right, the EFF is today holding its final election rally at the Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane in Limpopo. Let's cross live now to our reporter Pimani Baloy, who is at the stadium. Good afternoon. Can you tell us what is happening there right now?
Good afternoon, Gustav, and good afternoon to our viewers. We're coming to you live from outside the Peter Mokaba Stadium, where Julius Malema is at any moment expected to enter this stadium just in front of me and address thousands of party supporters who filled up the stadium. At this point, Gustav, from the initial program that we had received from the Economic Freedom Fighters, Mr. Malema was scheduled to take to that podium at around 12 midday today, but it's about 1 o'clock now. He hasn't taken to that podium. But at this point, inside that podium, we've seen party leaders taking up their seats, and we've also seen musicians starting to entertain, specifically artists, your dancers, entertaining supporters who filled up that stadium. One of the people who entertained the people is the Groovy Rides, bikers who just showed off their riding techniques. They're standing behind me right now, Gustav. After entertaining, they showcased how they can ride, getting on top of the bikes and down and all of that. Right now inside the stadium, some dancers are entertaining the supporters. We've seen DJs also playing loud music, specifically EFF struggle songs to keep these people entertained until Mr. Julius Malema takes to that podium. At this point, it sounds like the formal program is about to start, and we know that the program has other messages of support before that main address by Mr. Julius Malema. But earlier, let me go back a little bit, Gustav. They played a 2-hour-long documentary that just detailed the foundations of the Economic Freedom Fighters, how the idea to start this party came about and what they were fighting for. We've seen in that documentary all the leaders of the EFF, from your President Julius Malema, the Deputy President Floyd Shibamba, and other national and provincial leaders talking about how they decided to join this party. But we've also seen the voices of ordinary people. They went to Marikana, spoke to the people who lost their breadwinners, their husbands, their fathers in the Marikana massacre, spoke to them about how this affected them and why the EFF is committed to fighting for the land question, to nationalize the mines, but also speaking to other communities throughout South Africa, people who do not have water, who do not have access to basic basic services, speaking to young people who are always complaining about the lack of economic opportunities, employment opportunities across the country. These are some of the factors that we expect Mr. Malema to also include, to speak about as he takes to that podium, because today is their last time to appeal to South Africans to ensure that on Wednesday, when they get inside that ballot, voting station, they do vote for the EFF. Julius Malema is expected to speak any moment from now. We expect him to touch on these questions, but also, Gustav, we do know the contentious Africa stance, the borderless Africa stance that the EFF has taken. We also hope to get an update from him in terms of where he stands, because we know most critics have criticized the party, saying that they would not vote for the party specifically for that question. So, Gustav, we'll be getting back into the stadium where we expect Mr. Malema to take to the podium at any moment from now. Right here outside, we are seeing 1 or 2 party supporters who are the last-minute people to fill up that stadium. There are some empty chairs inside, and we think that when these last-minute people walk in, probably it might be filled to capacity. But at this point in time, there are several empty seats inside the new Peter Mokaba Stadium here in Polokwane.
Right, thank you so much for joining us there from outside the stadium. SABC News reporter Pimani Baloy telling us about all the events happening there this morning. Let's go back from Polokwane now to Johannesburg and the FNB Stadium here, where the ANC rally is happening, and our SABC News reporter Samkele Maseko is there. Samkele, good afternoon. What is an update that you have for us there at the moment? If we can, we can't see him at the moment, but we're going to speak to him right now, and we can see that the event's taking place there at the stadium as they're waiting for the people coming in, It's slowly filling up as the buses arrive there, and the stadium is filling up, and that, of course, is then delaying events in terms of the president speaking then. But we're going to go live to Samkele as soon as we can, and as soon as we can hear what is the latest update from what is happening there at the FNB Stadium now. In the meantime, the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa says the Complaints and Compliance Committee has found that the SABC's refusal to air a Democratic Alliance political advert had no legal basis under the Electronic Communications Acts or the regulations. The DA filed the complaint against the public broadcaster, arguing that the SABC had unlawfully rejected its advert. The ad shows a digital composition of the country's national flag burning and then unfurling, fully restored with background narration, campaigning for the DA. Now, the CCC recommends a 500,000 rand fine for breaching regulations due to prejudice caused to the DA. It also calls for the SABC to broadcast the DA advert. The SABC says it is studying the ICASA decision and will decide on a response once it has consulted on its implications. The DA says they welcome the ruling. Right, you're watching Week in Review here on the SABC News channel. We will be back right after this. Welcome back. President Cyril Ramaphosa speaking on the sidelines of the ANC Youth League Freedom March called on the International Court of Justice to rule against what he termed the slaughter of people in Rafah in Gaza.
South Africa has once again made a very strong case to the International Court of Justice in defense of the people of Gaza, the people of Palestine, and have called on the International Court of Justice to make a clear determination that the slaughter of the people of Palestine that's going on in Rafah should stop immediately. Now, the people of Palestine see us as a knight in shining armor, defending their rights and advocating justice for them. And we do this because a lack of justice for the people of Palestine is also a lack of justice for us. We were taught by the father of our democracy that we would not be completely free until the people of Palestine are free as well. So we are following on that mandate, and we hope that the court comes out with a very clear decision that can help to stop the slaughter and the genocide that is taking place there.
Now, the International Court of Justice has ordered Israel to immediately halt its military offensive in Rafah. South Africa had taken the state of Israel to the World Court, saying the situation is dire in southern Gaza. The ICJ had also been asked to modify its previous provisional measures. Pretoria has welcomed the World Court's order. The ICJ has also called for humanitarian aid to be allowed to flow through the Rafah crossing.
By 13 votes to 2, immediately halt its military offensive and any other action in the Rafah governorate which may inflict on the Palestinian group in Gaza conditions of life that would bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part.
Sharp and clear, the International Court of Justice has delivered its order on the request for the modification and the indication of provisional measures submitted by South Africa on May 10th in the South Africa versus Israel case. The World Court has also called for the aid to be allowed via the Rafah crossing.
Maintain open the Rafah crossing for unhindered provision at scale of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance.
The ICJ stated in no uncertain terms that the fact-finding missions who are mandated to conduct investigations in Gaza must also be given access.
Take effective measures to ensure the unimpeded access to the Gaza Strip of any commission of inquiry, fact-finding mission, or other investigative body mandated by competent organs of the United Nations to investigate allegations of genocide.
South Africa has welcomed the order.
But I believe a much stronger, in terms of wording, set of provisional measures, very clear call for a cessation, very important, and then the opening of the Rafah border and ensuring that humanitarian aid is made available, and then seizing this planned and current onslaught on Rafah, which is growing by the week.
But the key question is, will Israel comply with the provisional measures?
Well, Israel has had impunity for so long that they don't care what the global community says. So I think the responsibility goes to us as member states of the United Nations, and most particularly to the Security Council, because it's the one that has responsibility for global peace and security. So they must now determine measures to protect the people of Palestine.
The minister also commented on the International Criminal Court's possible warrants of arrest for key figures like Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his defense minister, and some Hamas officials.
Well, I think the ICC, in terms of its statute, clearly identified the areas of harm in indicating what it is seeking the warrants for. I thought that certain matters with respect to the reality of the history of the situation were not reflected in the statement of the prosecutor. For example, the issue of occupation, the responsibility of an occupier, the right of a people who are oppressed to defend and fight for freedom, to resist being occupied, being oppressed, being denied all rights. Those things were not mentioned.
The World Court further says Israel must submit a report to the court within a month on all measures taken to give effect to this order. Kylie Kumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Right, we're going to try to take you back now to the FNB Stadium in Johannesburg, the ANC's election campaign culminating there today at Nasrec in the south of Johannesburg. Our SABC News reporter, Samkele Maseko, is standing by in the stadium, and I hope you can hear me at this stage. Samkele, what is the latest that you have for us there?
Well, at this point in time, the president of the African National Congress has arrived here at the FNB Stadium. He has not yet come out to the pitch and to go on to the stage at this point in time. He is in the presidential suite. There are still a bit of hiccups and delays here. As you can see, they are still waiting to fill up that particular area where people are still trickling in to go to that particular area there at the top. So the stadium is about 98% full, with some areas still not having bums on those particular seats. That is why the ANC President Ramaphosa has not yet come out, but he has arrived here at the stadium with the other officials of the governing party.
Welcome back. This is Week in Review on the SABC News Channel. Now, this afternoon we are discussing a controversial political advertisement that has sparked a national debate and ended up in the courts. The Democratic Alliance's Burning Flag advert, which was intended to protest against the current government, has been taken to court by Zuku Madikane, a concerned citizen. Madikane argues that the advert promotes violence and hate speech and violates the Electoral Code of Conduct. He has taken the DA to court, seeking an interdict to stop the advert from being displayed and distributed. Now, joining us in studio today is Zuku Madikane himself. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Good afternoon.
And we are also then joined later by Mpumelelo Zikalala. But first, we're going to speak to you. And I'm going to ask you why you did this. You're the one who took this to court. Now, can you tell us what drove you to take this step?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to you and the viewers at home. What drove me to take this matter to court is the love of the Constitution. It is the love of South Africa. Now, one must understand that this, for one to have an idea of where the law stands in this matter, one has to understand the constitutional elements that are involved in this advertisement. In my papers to court, I have used 5 provisions of the Constitution, which is the founding, the preamble, the founding provisions which deal with, which is Section 1, which informs that South Africa is a sovereign state. It speaks about the supremacy of the Constitution. I've looked at Section 2 of the Constitution, which deals with the fact that any conduct or law that is inconsistent with it is invalid, and the obligations contained therein must be fulfilled. We looked at Section 5 of the Constitution, which deals with the national flag. I then moved to we look at Section 9 of the Constitution, which is subsection 1 ABC, which deals with the protection and the benefit of the law. And then we look at Section 16 of the Constitution, but most importantly, Section 16, one must understand that it deals with the freedom of expression, which the DA advocate says that they're expressing. But that freedom of expression is not without supervision. Subsection 2, A to C, of the Constitution says that freedom of expression excludes propaganda, imminent violence, and hate speech. Then we move to look at Section 18 of the Constitution, which deals with the freedom of association. Then you move from there, you look at Section 19(1) to A and to C, which deals with the rights of persons to political activities and to choose their political parties. So now if one were to look at the advertisement of the DA, it does. Any person who reads or understands that advertisement, it first degrades the national flag. Even from a perspective that one can say the DA is not literally banning the flag, but in the eyes of the electorate, take for example a person from Tanzania or Mthatha, they view or they see that flag banning, so the respect and the dignity of that flag is demeaned by the conduct of the DA. More so, I argued in the papers, which matter is still proceeding, by the way, that the DA's conduct is unconstitutional and it's invalid, because what I make to court is that the court must make a determination, and the electoral court, in terms of Section 21, subsection 2, is empowered by law to make interdicts and make declarators. So that it is that conduct that I'm challenging. But if one looks at the message itself, the DA says in these elections, the ANC will lose its majority. And then they used, imagine the collision between the ANC, EFF, and Mr. Zuma. And by the way, one must take it into account that they used the word violent EFF. So that particular message is deliberate to insert a mentality, an idea in the mind of the electorate that in the event any persons vote for the EFF, ANC, or they will be destroying, because they're saying that the country will burn. So if I do vote as a South African citizen for any of those parties, I will be literally contributing to the burning of South Africa. I view that as a direct violation of my Section 19(1) rights. Yes.
So the DA's intent in this case, do you think the DA's intention with the ad was to incite violence or to promote hate speech? Do you believe that?
Well, the law is very clear. If one looks at the judgment of the Supreme Court of Appeal in the case of AfriForum versus Nelson Mandela, I think at paragraph 25, the Supreme Court says intention is irrelevant when we're dealing with issues of equality, especially issues of hate speech. So intention is irrelevant. We look at the effect. So the effect is the test that the court must be concerned with. The intent is irrelevant.
What do you think of the idea, and we saw this in the ICASA ruling now by Judge Thokozile Masipa about fining the SABC 500,000 rand for refusing the ad, and that is that basically political advertising is different from general content. You can't have editorial decisions about political advertisements specifically because it's described in the ECA, and therefore it is different, and therefore it's like an opinion piece. It's like the DA's opinion, and they have a right to that.
One must understand that, and it is very important. No one is standing in between the DA or having an opinion. But that opinion, remember, if you look at Section 10(1) of the Equality Act, it deals with particulars of hate speech. Hate speech is not what you say. Hate speech can be an idea that you plant in the people. So I then mentioned to the court that it is that idea that which is challenged. It is that idea because what the DA is saying to the electorate, that if ever any of you vote for the ANC, EFF, or Mr. Zuma, you will be contributing to the burning of South Africa. That is inconsistent with the Constitution, because if you read Section 1, if you read actually the founding provisions, the preamble, but the last paragraph is very important. It says, we, through our freely elected representatives, adopt the Constitution as a supreme law. So there is an intention of the legislature of using the word freely, because that right, that duty must not be interfered with. So the DA cannot be excused from interfering with that right.
So we have another guest on the line. Thank you for your contribution there from Zikalala Attorneys, and we're speaking to Mpumelelo Zikalala this afternoon. Thank you so much for being on the line and for holding the line for us. And I want to ask you from the legal point of view, what is the DA's defense then regarding this advert? How do they justify that?
Good afternoon to you, also to your viewers. Well, basically, they're going to go on a technical basis and say, if you look at the act that has been stated and you look at the Constitution in the manner it has been stated in, there are sort of exceptions to the rules in which if you make that publication out of a political language or political speech or in any advertisement in which they're going to defend themselves and say we're doing it within that context, that's where we get the protection that you are looking for. There's no blanket sort of prohibition when it comes to political statements. Just as long, for example, those statements are going to be true, just as long those statements are going to pronounce any propaganda. And then maybe that can be the next step to say, does this particular statement that even the banning or the image depicting the banning of the flag amount to any propaganda that is there? Let's also remember there was no physical banning of the speech, which maybe would have been a crime. However, it is an image which is showing that, to me, our current stop does not really extend to that particular part, but it can, depending from what is going to be stated in this case. I think it must be separated into two. On a moral basis, and a basis in which we are saying we want someone who is going to be patriotic against for South Africa. That particular image is not an image that ought to be seen and ought to be utilized by any political party that says we are serious about the people that we want to lead. However, on a technical and a legal compliant type of basis, the DA may have thought long and hard and said, in order for us to save ourselves, so that we do not find ourselves in legal hot water, let's make sure that we're depicted in this image, and our defense is going to be the freedom of speech. our defense is going to be that we are engaging, or it's one of the exceptions which are allowed in the applicable law.
I also want to ask you about the ICASA ruling that we got yesterday, and how does this ruling by Judge Thokozile Masipa influence the case? Because she found that the SABC in this instance broke the law and fined it 500,000 rand, and her decision focusing on the legality of the SABC's actions in terms of the political advertisement regulations and the Electronic Communications Act.
I think again we're moving towards the technical compliance and moral compliance. On a technical basis, even though it would pain a few individuals to say that there's nothing wrong with the advertisement. However, on a moral and a patriotic type of a compliance basis, then there's everything wrong with it, because you can't have the image of a second flag which is going to be burnt. So even though these are two parallel cases that are there, they're not really linked to one another, but it does bolster the case of the DA, in which in one of the court papers, or probably I assume that when they respond, they're going to say, all that we're doing was we're engaging in an advertisement in which we knew we were pushing the envelope. However, in doing so, we did not break the law, because all that we're stating is what we believe to be true. If there's anything wrong with the advertisement, then we should be ways and means of complaining about it. But at the time, there's nothing that can be forged on a technical compliance basis.
Zuko, let me ask you about that point that he made there. How do you separate the two, the legal part and the moral part, and how it's affecting the political discourse in the country, the effects of it?
Well, one must understand one thing. In everything, that one must have a clear idea of, firstly, that we live in a country of diversity, and the aspect of morality is also put in the Constitution. One, and Mr. Zikalala is quite correct, that no matter how you may find a situation to be unpleasing to you, you cannot misbehave, because there's no other way or meaning to the DA's advertisement, but it is indicative of persons that do not first respect South Africa. They do not respect or take cognizance of where we come from. It is actually a literal slap to the electorate and those persons who associate themselves with these political parties. Because one thing that one must understand, it's the highest level of immorality by the Democratic Alliance. And more so, they are saying, what one must understand in this case is that the DA is saying to the people who associate themselves with either the ANC, the EFF, or Mr. Zuma, are going to be direct banners of South Africa. That's placing them in a category that is not catered for in our constitution. So it is completely immoral, and South Africa and even the SABC, I believe, it was correct on a moral basis. And if, from that point, the SABC rejected it. If one reads the statement of the SABC, paragraph, I think about 7, it says that we are a broadcast that must stand for the truth, not promote hate speech. So not only from my perspective, but from your perspective as the SABC, who are not legally qualified or knowledgeable of these things, but you could identify that that advertisement constitutes or has elements of hate speech. So it is completely immoral. The judgment of that was given against you is nothing that should deter the SABC from standing for that which is right. The DA's advertisement is completely immoral.
Do you believe that the Electoral Commission should play a greater role in regulating political advertising?
Well, because of the different legislations that are applicable, and if one reads the Electoral Act, looking at Section 20, subsection 4 of the Electoral Act, it deals with the issues of conduct pertaining to political parties. But if one reads it correctly, there is nowhere where they deal with, particularly with the issues of advertisement. But I do believe that there must be a role that they play for purposes of ensuring that there is protection of the electorate.
Let me ask you, Mpumelelo Zikalala, you're still on the line for us there. And we're just watching the stadium as well. The president has arrived now there, but we will go live to the stadiums as soon as the leaders start to speak there. There's the president of the ANC in the FNB stadium this afternoon. But we're talking about the DA advertisement, and I want to ask you, Mr. Zikalala, about this. Are there any precedents for similar cases involving political expression and hate speech in South Africa? it seems he's not there. Do you want to answer that? Do you know?
Well, there is a matter of, if I read correctly, in their heads of arguments, there is a matter that they referred to, and it relates to, I think it's the DA, but it is a matter that was probably decided by the Constitutional Court.
Yeah.
It does have some averments on the elements of freedom of expression, but it does not go as far as this particular instance, because that particular case deals with a different instance of freedom of expression. I believe that this particular case is unique on its own because it is the first time that in South Africa we come across such an event or an activity. It is most important, and that is why the courts must make a decision in this case, because courts are empowered by the Constitution, more so if one reads or has an understanding of Section 39(2) of the Constitution, which gives the courts the powers to expand the interpretation or when dealing with common law and to deal with issues from more of a moral and social perspective. So it is one of those cases where courts need to entertain for purposes of also precedent that in the future, and there must be clarity on whether or not this is legally acceptable. Yes, of course, maybe from a technical point of view, they might have a case, but on the papers that the DA has filed, because I've read them and replied to the papers that the DA says, the DA is very disrespectful, I'll say this, because in paragraph 6.1 of the DA's papers, they are saying to the court, yes, we understand the case of Mr. Matikane, but we don't believe that is urgent because the effect, and that is the most important thing, the effect to the electorate has already taken place. That is not right. But what they forget is that the Constitutional Court in the case of Rustenburg says the following at paragraph 58, says that the Equality Court must not only deal with, it must not only be preemptive, it must also deal with cases that have occurred so as to prevent it from occurring again. So that was also dealt with in my papers, heads of arguments, quite translucently, that this court is not only called to stop the effect, but also to stop it from happening.
We have Mr. Zikalala back on the line. Mpumelelo Zikalala, I believe you're back on the line. Just lastly, how do you think political parties can balance their right to freedom of expression in a democracy where you would expect hotly contested elections with the need to promote respectful and inclusive political discourse?
I would think that the political parties would want to make sure that they're able to garner support. Well, keep the supporters that you have and be able to attract more. Now, if you're going to engage in a conduct that shows that you are non-patriotic to South Africa, if you're going to engage in a conduct that shows that you don't really care about the individuals that are there, then I don't think it's going to work in your favor. Yes, on a technical basis, you may be able to comply, but I don't think we'll be able to win the hearts of the people that haven't decided which political party you need to vote for if you are going to engage in any act that shows the burning. Because once you say you want to burn something, you are basically saying you want to destroy it. But it linked to the question that you asked earlier, I think to the colleague that is in the studio.
Yes.
I think the Electoral Act needs to be developed to take care of cases in which political parties are pushing the envelope. When the Act was drafted, there was not many contestation as we are seeing now. There were no innovating advertising ways in which there are. However, look at the many political party adverts that are there. And if you hear that there's the name of another political opponent that is being branded, then it is pushing the envelope, and I do not think that was the sole intention of creating this type of adverts and regulating it. I think they need to go to the drawing table and say, if you want to have cordial, respectful elections in which people are not going to try and attack the other things than what the political parties are actually doing, let's make sure that you regulate how they advertise themselves in the future.
Thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon and for a fascinating conversation. It's a good case study in the end. Zuko Marikane, thank you for coming into the studio, and also Mpumelelo Zikalala joining us on the line there. This is Week in Review on the SABC News Channel, and we will be back right after this.
For us, it all begins
begins with the pulse of our newsroom. Meticulous preparation is our mantra as we craft a midday experience that's a must-watch for both business leaders and leaders of the home.
We've made it our business to step into each day to bring you on point. The world of money is our business.
Factual, relevant, precise.
On point every weekday at 12 p.m.
People have applied from 1994, but many of them don't have houses.
My mother did try to get an RDP since 2003. She hasn't got one.
Bangiya ehousing ngithi ngiyo-check bafike lapha basitshele ukuthi izindla zikakaphumi.
There is an allegation that those people who are working for the government, they are selling those houses.
India khona i-RDP i-right for mina but ke izincane izindlu zakhona.
2001 ngibhalise indlu, so till today angakayitholi indlu.
Batho ba ba ngwadisitseng dintlu tsa bone be di approviwa but they are not occupying those houses.
It's been 30 years, and for a wall-to-wall reflection of the South African story, catch Democracy 30 with Oliver Dixon, Sundays at 8:30 p.m.
Welcome back. This is Week in Review on the SABC News channel. On this last weekend before the general election on Wednesday here in South Africa, all the big political parties are having their final rallies, and at the FNB Stadium in Johannesburg, that is where the ANC's program has commenced. We just heard them singing the national anthem. We saw Thabo Mbeki there speaking on a video link, and there's Gwede Mantashe as they're singing. And we're waiting for the president to speak, and then we'll show you that live, and we'll hear what the president has to say. But in Polokwane, at the same time, we have another rally, and that is at the Peter Mokaba Stadium, and that's the EFF's final rally. And they're still waiting for the arrival of Julius Malema, the leader there, who is also going to speak. We expect the two leaders, Ramaphosa in Johannesburg and Malema in Polokwane, to speak this afternoon at their final political rallies, and we'll bring it to you live here on the SABC News channel. Now, traditional healers in Mahikeng in the Northwest Province are pleading with government to employ them at healthcare facilities such as clinics and medical centres to treat patients like medical doctors do. They say this will be a step in the right direction, as some people not only suffer from conditions that need medical treatment, but also spiritual illnesses that can only be healed by traditional healers. This emerged during a march they held in Mahikeng, where they handed over a memorandum of demands to the Premier's office. Our reporter, Selwane Kakao, and video journalist Tumelo Setlabetsi compiled this report.
These traditional healers say it's about time that they are recognized, accommodated more, and better remunerated for their work.
We want to be represented wherever we are. We want to be represented, even at the parliament. We want to be represented as traditional healers. If then the government can be considered like that, we'll be happy.
Every April, Masakere, it's a new year. It's a new financial year. We should be part of that. At least so it could be easy for us to send even some of us, or some of our students, or some of our doctors outside to go and learn more of the herbs and the indigenous herbs that we have.
How about we get a pay slip, just in a minor summary of what a pay slip for individuals, sangomas, like the professional ones.
They handed over a memorandum of demands to a representative of the Office of the Premier.
We really see a need for our government to help us to initiate the traditional hospital. We really need that. And two, we see a need for the department like Arts and Culture in help with the government should try and help us to utilize the departments like that.
The representative promised a response to the memorandum.
We would like to have a thorough meeting somewhere around next week where we will exhaust all issues that are raised. with relevant departments that must actually be able to respond to issues that are raised here. And we also appreciate some of the issues that are actually raised. I mean, one of the things that they raised, they're saying that they want to be utilized.
Although government made no commitments regarding the demands, the group hopes for a positive outcome. Selwane Khachau, SABC News, Mahikeng.
This month, we thought that we'd visit some of the green innovators and greenpreneurs to understand how they are contributing to the green economy.
We are creating cosmetic soaps from the byproduct. What we teach you at the college is, number one, we teach you how to farm, to produce the very food that we're eating.
On the moving services side, we used to be very plastic intensive. All our packing materials weren't biodegradable.
We actually have these teaching gardens for our children, and we introduce them to the gardens so that they know where food comes from.
There is opportunity in waste. Every cardboard that you see, every milk carton that you see, there's value attached to it.
Remember to support small businesses in your communities, and let's make those rands and cents circulate. SME on Point, every Friday at 1:30, only on S3 and SABC News Channel.
Welcome back. The University of Cape Town has appointed Professor Mosa Moshabela as its new Vice Chancellor following a 6-month recruitment and selection process. He's currently the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and that's a role he has held since 2021.
The University of Cape Town's new Vice Chancellor, Professor Mosa Moshabela, will play a key role in balancing the interests of all stakeholders at the university. He will also be in charge of managing the transition period for UCT's new leadership, as a new council is also expected to be elected in the coming months. Moshabela will look to build trust and grow UCT's community. He says he will also work hard to rebuild public confidence in UCT, currently ranked the #1 university in Africa, which was negatively impacted towards the end of the previous Vice-Chancellor's tenure.
Sometimes when we are managing and building institutions, we get distracted by other things of operations and governance and other things that are very important to enable the academic project. But if the academic project is hindered in any way, then you're going to lose the talent, the students and the academics, and that is something that UCT cannot afford. The reason UCT really is what it is because of its people. So in terms of making sure that we can build that culture that enables them to succeed, it's something that is my priority.
A medical doctor by profession, UCT says Moshabela showed a sincere commitment to agile, transformative and values-based leadership during the recruitment process. The council says it believes he's the best candidate who will work with conviction and vision to ensure UCT's sustainability into and beyond 2030.
We expect him to continue.
And we have to interrupt that story and take you back live now to the Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane, where Julius Molema has now arrived, and we will show you the live pictures out of Polokwane. And that is where we leave it for today. Thank you so much for spending your Saturday afternoon with us. Stay with the SABC News channel for live coverage of these final political rallies before Wednesday's general election. Thank you for watching and take care.